Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are going on an absolute roller coaster of a journey. We're going to travel all the way from the microscopic biology happening, well, right inside your own stomach, out into the weird and wonderful wild kingdom, and then finally right up to the incomprehensible edges of the known universe. We are going to completely shatter some of the most fundamental assumptions you probably have about reality, and then use the latest science to put the pieces back together. So go ahead and grab your metaphorical seatbelts. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to look down at your hands for a second. Seriously, just think about your physical makeup. You probably think of yourself as, well, completely human, right? It makes sense. But what if I told you that by pure numbers, it is actually a coin toss whether you are a human being or just a highly advanced walking bacterial colony? Crazy, right? So that brings us to Chapter 1, The Bizarre Human Body. You are not who you think you are. Just consider the sheer scale of these numbers for a minute. The average adult man is made of roughly 36 trillion human cells, and women have about 28 trillion. That is a lot. But living on your skin, up in your nose, and especially in your gut are bacteria. And there are actually slightly more bacterial cells in your body right now than human cells. If you were to somehow scoop them all up, they'd weigh somewhere between 2 to 6 pounds. In fact, since they're so incredibly concentrated in your digestive system, a substantial bowel movement can actually temporarily shift the balance back in favor of your human cells. I know, kind of gross, but absolutely fascinating. Let's look at another biological curveball here. 300. That's the number of bones you were born with. Now, you might remember from biology class that human adults have exactly 206 bones. So where did almost 100 of your bones go? Did you just lose them? Nope. When babies are born, many of those 300 bones are made entirely of softer, much more malleable cartilage, which, helps a fetus curl up in the womb. As we age, these bones calcify, they become rigid, and many of those smaller ones physically fuse together into larger singular bones. And that whole process is what brings you down to that final tally of 206. While we're literally looking at our hands, let's ask an everyday question that most of us think we already know the answer to. Why do our fingers get pruny when we swim or, take a long bath? The completely obvious assumption, and actually the one scientists believed for a very long time, is that your dead skin cells basically act like a giant sponge. They absorb water, and that causes your skin to swell up and wrinkle, right? Well, actually, scratch that. It's completely wrong. So the crucial point is that pruning is actually an involuntary nervous system response. When your hands are submerged, your blood vessels shrink down, which decreases the volume of blood in your fingers. Because the internal mass drops, your skin essentially just deflates and folds over the shrunken vessels, creating that pruny effect. And we know for sure it's a nervous system trick because people with certain types of nerve damage in their fingers simply do not get pruny at all. The absolute wildest part about this? Evolutionary biologists have literally no idea why we evolved this bizarre feature. It's just a total mystery. Moving right along to Section 2, Nature's Hidden Drama, Crime and Deception in the Wild. All right, meet the brown-headed cowbird. These guys operate what ornithologists quite literally refer to as a mafia. These birds are brood parasites, meaning they don't build their own nests. Instead, they lay their eggs in the nests of other bird species, basically forcing the host bird to raise the cowbird chick. But here is where it gets incredibly sinister. The adult cowbird will periodically fly back just to check on the nest. If the host bird has realized the egg is an imposter and kicked it out, oh boy. The cowbird mafia will brutally ransack the nest in retaliation, just completely destroying the host's actual eggs. And if the cowbird chick does happen to survive, the adult cowbird uses a secret, pre-programmed vocal password to call its biological child away from its adoptive family so it can go join the cowbird flock. Nature is ruthless, guys. So, going from crime to tragedy here, think about the smell of freshly cut grass. For us, it's deeply nostalgic, right? It reminds us of summer afternoons or baseball games. But for the grass itself, that scent is quite literally a desperate cry for help. That classic fresh smell is made of compounds called green leaf volatiles. Because plants are totally immobile, when a lawnmower slices them up, they release this chemical distress signal right into the air. It's to warn all the neighboring plants of an impending attack, which triggers them to pump out their own biological defenses. So the next time you step outside, remember, you aren't smelling summer. You are literally smelling botanical panic. Now, this brings us to one of the absolute most baffling cases of convergent evolution. We already know that humans and great apes have intricate fingerprints. That's a given. But incredibly, koalas, a completely unrelated marsupial, they independently evolved them too. And this highlights just how bizarre evolution can be. A koala's fingerprints are so perfectly identical to a human's, with the exact same loops and whorls, that under a microscope, they are completely indistinguishable. I mean, think about that. A koala could theoretically leave trace evidence at a crime scene and deeply, deeply confuse a forensics team. Let's jump right into Section 3, Everyday Illusions and Oddities. Reality is playing tricks on you. Okay, have you ever pulled clothes out of the dryer and you just couldn't tell if they were still slightly damp or if they were just cold? Well, there's actually a biological reason for that. Humans literally cannot feel wetness. Our skin completely lacks what are called hydroreceptors, which are the specific cells required to detect humidity. Instead, your brain basically just creates an illusion. It takes in the data of temperature, texture, and pressure, and it just makes an educated guess about whether something is wet. So when a cold metal chair tricks you into thinking you sat in a puddle, it's just because your brain's guessing game completely failed you. Speaking of water, just look up at a fluffy, floating cumulus cloud. It looks like a totally weightless cotton ball, right? But if you do the math on the density of the water droplets spread across a cubic kilometer, you get a really absurd reality. An average cumulus cloud weighs roughly 1.1 million pounds, and this brilliantly illustrates just how crazy our atmosphere is. Because that means every single time a standard, fluffy cloud floats over your house, the equivalent mass of 4 adult blue whales is just hovering right above your roof. No way, right? It only stays up there because that massive weight is spread out so widely that its overall density is actually lower than the surrounding air. And that scales us all the way up to our final chapter, Section 4, The Absurdity of Space, Numbers that Break the Brain. Let's try and track a single particle of light, a photon, created right in the core of our sun. Now, you probably know that light takes about 8.5 minutes to travel from the sun's surface to the Earth. But how long do you think it takes for that photon to get from the sun's core to its surface? It takes over 100,000 years. See, the core is a plasma so incredibly dense that the photon is just constantly crashing into other particles. It's forced to take this probabilistic, zigzagging path that physicists call a random walk. So that little light particle struggles in the dark for 100 millennia, finally breaks free at the surface, and then just sprints the entire 93 million mile gap to your eyeball in just 8.5 minutes. Now consider a number so large it's almost incomprehensible. 8.1 times 10 to the 67th power. This isn't the distance to some far-off star. This is simply the number of different ways you can shuffle a standard 52-card deck of playing cards. To put that into perspective for you, that number is more than 3 times the amount of individual atoms in the entire Milky Way galaxy. Just because of the sheer math of factorials, every single time you properly randomize a deck of cards, you are holding an exact sequence that has almost certainly never existed before in the entire history of the universe. And honestly, it will likely never exist again. So, with numbers that absolutely vast, what is the ultimate fate of all those atoms, all those galaxies, and all those stars we look up at every single night? Well, the answer is incredibly sobering. You see, the universe isn't just expanding. The expansion of space-time itself is actually accelerating. And this brings us to the cosmological event horizon, which is located about 7.2 billion light-years away. Because space-time is expanding in all directions, everything past this point is physically being pushed away from us faster than the speed of light. This means the light from those distant galaxies will eventually never be able to reach us again. Over billions of years, the stars in our night sky will simply wink out of existence, one by one, just vanishing into the void. The beautiful starry universe we see today, it's just a fleeting moment in cosmic time. Eventually, our tiny pale blue dot will be left completely isolated in the dark. So it leaves us with this final thought. If the universe is actively erasing its own history, what other cosmic wonders have already disappeared before we even had the chance to look?